Not 100 million, not 200 million, but 300 million Arsenal have to spend. It's almost unbelievable. This is the Arsenal News Show. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk. Back again with you guys and girls for another episode of what is the Arsenal News Show. Joining you every single morning at 8 a.m. UK time. Thank you as always for tuning in and joining me and making this a part of your morning routines. It is incredibly appreciated. I hope you've had a fantastic week so far. I hope that things have been going good and well for you all. Thank you so much for tuning in. Do drop a like on the video. Do subscribe to the channel if you're new around here with those notifications turned on, so you never miss a show. Good morning to those joining us live in the chat box. Paul, Blackshine, Peter, Barry. We've got Paul and Stevie and Matt G, Wilson, Jitty, Carlton. We've got Matt G, Brian, Jamil, Amira, Tom, Rich. We've got Dan and Glenn and Trader Mike and Rob and Kim and Robust. Good morning to you all. Thank you so much for you all being here. If you could drop a like, if you could subscribe, that'd be massively appreciated if you aren't already sub to the channel. And yeah, looking forward, of course, to hearing plenty more from you guys and girls in part two. We're going to take some of your questions, some of your thoughts on today's topics. So quite a lot to talk about today. And it's a bit of a hectic day because there is a press conference. I'll be heading off to the Shubber Realty Training Centre a little bit later on this afternoon to hear from Mikel Arteta, of course, ahead of that game. Everything is booked now for Madrid. Very, very much looking forward to that. Should be a lot of fun. And looking forward to the first experiences of the Spanish capital and the Bernabeu, and for those, of course, who else are going and have managed to get their accommodation and hotels sorted, you'll know that during these holidays it is quite the pricey event. So yeah, very much looking forward to it. But goodness me, it's going to set people back a lot of money to attend. Hopefully, an amazing evening of football for Arsenal as well. Let's jump, though, to today's story, shall we? We start with Ihsan Khan's report in the Mail that Arsenal are mulling over which way to expand the Emirates after being recently presented with a variety of options by an architect firm. Arsenal were approached about hosting Euro 2028 games, but declined. 2028, therefore, potentially a chance to involve work on the stadium for completion. There is a long-term plan and vision to improve not just, of course, the capacity of the Emirates, but the infrastructure as well. Having built the stadium in 2006, a lot of the infrastructure has been outdated. There are issues with the seating. There's lots of things that need to be addressed in the Emirates that have so far been not addressed. The outside, of course, has had plenty of changes made over the last half decade or so, which has made it more of a modernized exterior, but it's the internal workings and the internal structure that is in need of considerable redevelopment. And that hopefully will be something that we can see happen in the coming years, which is obviously a very important thing as well. Meanwhile, it is today that we find out England's squad. Thomas Tuchel will be announcing his first squad as England manager, and both Miles Lewis-Skelly and Ethan Nwaneri are bracing to find out if they will indeed be included in that squad or whether or not they will be involved in the England under-21s, because neither of them have been included in the under-17s, 18s, or 19s, or 20s squad from the looks of things. So there is a chance that either or both will be involved in either the senior England setup for this squad or indeed the under-21s, if indeed they're not involved in this squad. David Ornstein reported this morning that Marcus Rashford has found his way back into the England squad as well. There is a feeling that of the two, Miles Lewis-Skelly is the one that it looks like will be in the team. That's that Miles Lewis-Skelly will be called up. The one we're not as certain about is Ethan. Miles Lewis-Skelly, there's a really big feeling about him being with the group when it is eventually announced, but Ethan Nwaneri, we're not 100% sure. But there's a lot of feeling that Lewis-Skelly will indeed get into that senior England squad. In fact, AFC Matt is just dropping in that the BBC have already reported that Lewis-Skelly and Dan Burn are going to get call-up. So we're just waiting to find out in what squad Ethan Nwaneri is going to. But certainly the conversations I was having earlier in the week gave me the feeling that Miles, yes, Nwaneri, maybe not. Maybe the under-21s for Nwaneri. But we will have to wait and see how things go down. But I sincerely hope that both would get into the team. It'd be great to see that happen. And of course, it's a really important experience for them. Gives them the opportunity to play with different coaches, to learn new skills, learn new traits, mature and develop some more. And so that's obviously a very, very important thing too. Moving forwards, Andrea Berta has reportedly £300 million to spend in the summer transfer window, coming into the club expecting to be able to spend huge sums of money. This has been reported by a number of different outlets. I almost feel remiss of even talking about this story because, as I tell you, each and every single time we cover this topic, nobody knows this. Nobody knows this. No one is ever in the know about how much Arsenal have to spend because war chests don't exist. They don't exist. There is absolutely no reason for the club to release any information at all about how much there is to spend. There is also still plenty of financial details to be worked out between now and the end of the season, depending on how Arsenal get on in different competitions. Will also determine about how much they can spend in the summer. Why on earth they would ever want to leak any information about how much they have to spend considering especially if it was a lot of money, because that would give clubs that they negotiate with more power in any negotiating standpoint. There is absolutely no reason for a war chest 300 million story to in any way have any kind of truth to it, really. This isn't to say that Arsenal can't go and spend that amount of money. For the record, they absolutely could go and spend hundreds of millions of pounds. It doesn't legitimize the stories because, from a personal point of view, my honest opinion, based upon all the evidence I always continue to give you on these types of threads, it makes absolutely zero sense for this type of information to ever be sourced. So always take them with, I'd say, a solid handful of salt. These stories, it's never ever worth jumping the gun on these. Within these stories contains information supposedly about a number of transfer targets, one of which whose name has been circulating over the past week, and that's Bruno Guimaraes. The issue I have with this story is that a number of, or the outlets basically going with this, is claiming that he could be available for as low as £60 million. I think it would be kind of mad to see Newcastle part ways with Bruno Guimaraes for as low as that, one of the best midfielders in the Premier League over the last 2 to 3 seasons. It would make no sense for Newcastle to allow him to leave for as little as £60 million. He's comfortably an £80 million player at minimum. And I think that when you're looking at Arsenal signing midfielders, of course, they've already got Declan Rice. We know that Martin Zubimendi is a player that Arsenal are still very hopeful of getting a deal done in the summer. I think more creative attacking players are more of a priority. And of course, wide players and a centre forward is also very keen as well. And speaking of forward players, Nico Williams, it continues. This is according to Bild in Germany, despite interest in Leroy Sane and the reported talks with Leroy Sane over a potential summer move. Nico Williams remains a club priority for Arsenal in the summer. Arteta, we know, is a big, big fan of Nico Williams and would love to see Arsenal manage to pull off a deal for the Spanish international. But there are, of course, other candidates. There are other talks going on because Arsenal like to have backup pivot plans and other options as well. But if Arsenal can get their hands on Nico Williams this summer, obviously it'll be a very, very important deal for the wide area also. And lastly, of course, Mikel Arteta is facing the press today ahead of Arsenal's game against Chelsea. There was Europa League and Europa Conference League action last night. UEFA Europa Conference League action last night as well. Chelsea squeezing through against FC Copenhagen, winning 1-0 on the night, 3-1 on aggregate. I saw an amazing stat actually last night that Jadon Sancho had completed his first shot on target of the year. In fact, his last shot on target was December 26th, and he had not completed a shot until last night. Before that, up until that point. So nearly 3 whole months, just short of 3 months of Jadon Sancho being unable to hit the target with a shot. He managed to change that in last night's game between Chelsea and Copenhagen. Didn't score, but he did manage to get a shot on target. So there is that. In terms of other results, of course, on the day, we saw Djurgården go through to the last 8, winning 3-0 against Paphos. No, I'm being serious. Lugano managed to go through 3-1 on penalties against Celje. Cercle Bruges beat Jagiellonia Bialystok. Of course, Chelsea managed to beat Copenhagen. Vitoria lost 4-0 to Real Betis. Fiorentina beat Panathinaikos 3-1 to go through. And Legia Warsaw won 2-0 against FC Molde. Of course, in the next round, this means that Chelsea will be playing Legia Warsaw. So my colleague, Mr. Bobby Vincent, will be off to Poland for that. I'll be seeing Bobby on the weekend, of course, as we both cover Arsenal against Chelsea on Sunday. So that should be interesting. In terms of the Europa League, we've got also some interesting games. Rangers managed to go through despite going 2-0 down on the day, knocking out Jose Mourinho's Fenerbahce. Martin Zubimendi and Real Sociedad sadly eliminated by Manchester United, although it was a controversial penalty given in that game. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's one of the worst penalty decisions I think I've ever seen in favour of United. Spurs managed to go through against Azad Alkmaar for winning 3-1 on the night. Lyon go through 7-1 aggregate against FCSB. Eintracht Frankfurt go through against Ajax. Lazio go through against Victoria Pilsen after a 1-1 draw in the Stadio Olimpico. Olympiacos 1-2-1 against Bodo Glimt, but go out of the competition. And Nico Williams' Athletic Club progressing over Roma 4-3. Mats Hummels posting an apology last night onto social media after getting sent off after just 11 minutes in that game and potentially costing Roma the game in total and the tie as well. But yes, Mikel Arteta will face the media this afternoon ahead of Arsenal's game against Chelsea. It's his first time speaking since, of course, Arsenal found out that they will be playing Real Madrid in the Champions League. This is Arsenal's last game for more than 2 weeks. Next 2 weekends, no football. Nada. Nothing. I hope that you continue to tune into the channel. We'll still be doing these shows 8 a.m. Pretty much every single morning. I hope you continue to tune in and help us through this cold, dark time of football. There's very, very little going on. Arsenal's next game will be on the 1st of April at home against Fulham in a midweek evening match. Well, let's go to part 2 and your questions and more right after this. Okay. This is part 2 of the show where we tackle some of your questions and more. We are going to go through as many as we can. Mohammed says it's freezing outside. It is pretty cold. It was like last week was pretty warm. I think next week, when the international break comes around, is meant to be quite nice. Looking here, it says 16, 15. Yeah, 15, 16, 15 degrees at the end of next week. That should be a lot of fun. I'm actually going away next weekend over the international break. Very much looking, not away, just somewhere in the UK to celebrate a birthday. But it is going to be a very much appreciated a break again before, of course, coming back for those crazy Champions League games against Real Madrid next month. James Justin says, isn't there a footballer called James Justin? Am I making that up? James Justin. Yes, he plays for Leicester. James Justin's in chat. Thank you, James, for tuning in. Hi, Tom. Please explain how journalists have insight into the life of Andrea Berta, his plans, wishes with specific names and transfers before he has even signed for Arsenal. When it's just waffle, when is it just waffle or when is it credible? Well, of course, Andrea Berta has been working in the game for a long, long time. And so that means that over the course of however many years, well over a decade, journalists working in Italian, Spanish, European football in general are able to build up their contacts and, of course, have probably built up relationships in a way with Andrea Berta as well. So in some ways, there is always going to be some level of, ability to get a story, to build up those networking and build up those contacts. So it can happen. I always think that there's ways, and we talk quite a lot on the channel about how you can best equip yourself kind of sifting through what is and what isn't legit. I always tend to, I have an unwritten rule. It's practically a written rule these days that Warchest stories are always something to be extremely cautious of. Just because they make absolutely no sense for clubs to release any information about how much there is to possibly spend, especially before the end of the season when it's not even been 100% decided at this point in time. Let's go up in the chat to see if I missed any, and then we'll scroll back down. Amberly says, "Why would Newcastle sell Guimaraes that cheap? Makes no sense, especially as we wouldn't be the only ones interested." Steve says, "Whenever you say £300 million, can you raise your little finger to your mouth, Doctor Evil style?" It's £300 million. Let's go to Gary, who says, "To be honest, Miles Lewis-Skelly didn't look all that in centre midfield the other night." He is 18 years old. so in a dead rubber game. So I will say, Gary, just maybe chill on that. Roy says, "Team, when Berta was when Berta was interviewed, would he be informed about how much would be available for the summer and subsequent windows?" Without question, there'll be discussions, Roy, about the potential budgets, what Arsenal can and can't spend. But it's also, people have to remember that transfers aren't just like, you have 300 million. Let's simplify it down. Let's say in hypothetical terms, you have 300 quid to spend on something, right? Say on the weekly shop, you got 300 quid to spend. Now, when you go to the supermarket, all the prices that you see for those products that you want to buy, that's how much you're paying. Or if you live in America, for some reason, you decide to not put the tax on that. I don't know why you do that. It's dumb. But when you go into an English supermarket and you see the prices, that's what you're paying. Includes VAT on that. But when you're in a transfer window, player prices are not like that. When you pay a fee for a player, not only is that fee amortized across the length of that player's contract, but also there could be potential payment terms, structures, add-ons, clauses in those contracts. The price tag that you see reported when it comes up saying Arsenal sign Ozil for £42 million, it doesn't that isn't exactly what Arsenal are 100% going to pay. It doesn't mean they're going to pay it all up front. So the budget for a summer, it's not going to be, we're going to sign this player for X amount of money, this player for this amount of money, we're going to sell this player for this amount of money, and that's all going to add up into how much it costs. That's why I hate doing those kind of lists of sign this player for X, this player for Y, this player for Z. It doesn't work that way. So even if they are able to have those conversations, of course, it will depend upon negotiations with clubs about players they're going to buy. It depends upon wage structures and how that fits in the wage bill as well, and how much kind of wiggle room you've got in terms of wages as well. So it's really not it's really not a realistic kind of thing to look into. But of course, Berta will be aware of, certain levels of how much can spend. But there'll be conversations not just now, but throughout the window in terms of when deals and proposals and offers get made. Jamil says, "Do you know when we can expect an official announcement?" I would think this month. I think it would be fairly safe to assume that we will get an answer. We'll get an announcement this month. I think that's probably fair. If not, at the very latest, I think early April. But I think it will probably be this month. Arteta was basically talking about announcements in his last press conference before the game against PSV. Paul says, "Which players do you think will leave in the summer? How much do you think to receive on each of them?" Don't know in terms of how much. It's very, very variable, but we've kind of talked about this before. You've got obviously your likes of Kivior and Zinchenko. Tierney will go on a free, Partey on a free, Jorginho on a free, Fabio Vieira, Lokonga Tavares. I think we could see one of Martinelli or Trossard maybe go. It wouldn't surprise me if that happened. So there's a number there that could yet move on from the team. Vanajit says, "Would you expect the Berta announcement during the international break? Potentially, because was there any substance to a late hijack base in Milan? Not as far as I'm aware, no." Blackshine says, "Would the 300 million take into account sales, or will they be on top?" We have absolutely no idea. That's the thing. We have absolutely no idea where this 300 million comes from, how they've calculated it, what it's got to do with. It's impossible to know because it's fabricated. Oliver says, being hopeful here, but if Newcastle don't get Champions League, does this mean that we have a good chance about signing Isak with the money that we have for the summer? Or even if we did, would you prefer a cheaper player? The issue I've got with Isak is that if you go to sign Isak, you're spending well over 100 million. No matter what, if they get Champions League or not, you're spending over 100 million quid on a player who is brilliant, but has got this injury record that makes me concerned that you're going to blow the majority of whatever you do have to spend on a player that could be absent for a significant chunk of the season, and then have you improve the squad enough. So I have my concerns about the Isak deal because of the price tag specifically. That's what gives me pause for thought on any move for Isak. Backer Lasagna says £300 on a weekly shop, a Waitrose shopper. It was a hypothetical. Certainly, I'm an Aldi man all day long. Aldi and Asda. Yeah, you gotta get, make your money's worth. Ian says exactly, Tom. So why should we believe a bid for 40 million for Watkins, not 60 million, and not any other million? What I will say, of course, Ian, about that is very different when there are sources that you've got that confirm to you specifically from those involved in the deal. Arsenal's offer of 40 million plus add-ons is very much true. So it's very, very different. Nick says, I very much doubt they're telling everyone that interviewing the football director's job, the budget, without some form of commitment and non-disclosure agreement. Exactly. Ashley says, when Kai got injured, I posted a question here. Who is a makeshift striker, Marino or Calafiori? I said that time Calafiori. Logical consensus was Marino. I just felt Calafiori was quicker and more comfortable playing with the right foot as well. Well, I mean, I've been talking for weeks about how much I'd love to see Calafiori play up front, but it's not, sadly, something that we're going to see. Caraveri says, why would you go for Isak and Osimhen's available for 62? I mean, wages for starters. Arsenal aren't going to pay Osimhen's wages. They're just too silly. Asala says, do you think we need to sign a Guimaraes if we sign a Zubimendi? I mean, they are very different players. Guimaraes is much more of an 8. Zubimendi is much more of a pivoty. So you could fit them both in the same team very comfortably, but I kind of want more of if we're going to sign more of an 8, I'd kind of want someone more offensive, I think, than Guimaraes. I want someone who's going to offer a lot more as well. Ian says, I really have to say these numbers do not have much confidence in them other than some sources, which is most of the time based on biased and not independent unless those sources are revealed. Ian, I mean, it's tinfoil hat stuff, obviously, but you will forever live your life. It's only until I've actually been able to jump into this space that, before that, all of it was speculation. When I was teaching before and not in the journalistic space, I didn't have only a few as I started to do this more, but now being in this space and understanding how things work, like it's crazy. Like, it's a mad world, but it's nice knowing when you can say stuff and know that it's true. Like the whole Watkins situation, knowing how that went down. Whereas before, like, if this happened 4 years ago, let's say, I'd be speculating loads. But it's much nicer being able to kind of talk about it with so much more clarity around it. Martin says, if you spend over 100 million on Isak and he gets injured for the long term, then you have no scope to replace in mid-season. It's about balance. Like, I'd love to sign Alexander Isak, just for the record. Like, I'd love to sign him. Just ignore the money bit. It would be a great signing for Arsenal. There is no debate about that. The issue is with the Isak deal is that injury situation will never, ever, ever go away. It is there. It is established. We know that it exists. And so if you go and spend the majority of your expenditure on a player who you can't guarantee of any player, but that you cannot confidently be assured that they will be with you for the majority of a season and into the future, it's very hard to be completely and utterly comfortable with spending that amount of money on the player. That is always going to exist. Always. You can think it would be a great signing, but at the end of the day, like, you can't ever be 100% assured. Dan says, hi, Tom. What do you think must have caused Aiden Heaven and Chido Martin to join Man United? They seemed like promising stars. Arsenal wanted to keep both of those players. They made very good offers for both of those players. Man United made, frankly, to what I've heard, a ridiculous offer financially, particularly for Chido Martin. I think with Aiden Heaven, the Aiden Heaven one is more to do with like a pathway, to be fair to him. And Obi would have certainly looked at the pathway side as well. But to my understanding, there was a lot of kind of the financial disparity between Arsenal's offer and Man United's offer. And it wasn't that Arsenal's offer wasn't fair. It was very fair. It was just that Man United's offer was crazy. Sooty says, Tom, what will your summer look like with no games, just writing a load of articles and chasing transfers? Or will you be going on tours to cover Arsenal's? Oh, Sooty, you've brought up a real bugbear of mine now. So I'm probably not going on the tour. I'm almost certainly not going on the tour because I'm going to a wedding when I believe the tour is going to happen. And I'm really, I'm one of the best men for it. So I have to, I have to go. As you can tell, I am very conflicted about it, but friend first, job second, and let's just hope that they are very appreciative of me making this sacrifice. Yeah, I'm not going on the tour. I don't think I would have been. But unfortunately, it is looking like it's going to coincide with a wedding that I am the best man for. So one of the best men for. So yeah, pain, but yeah. And it's not a simple case of just flying in and flying out of where we're going on tour, because it would be exceptionally expensive for our company to obviously cover that. So someone else will be going in my place, and they will have an amazing time, and I will not be what's the word, holding any grudges at all. None at all. I'm going away also in June as well, so I'm going to Canada in June, so that's for a little while. But I'm thinking of taking a break during that period. I will, of course, while the tour is going on, be doing shows from here. Yes, there'll be a lot of work going on transfers and digging up stories and doing journalism stuff. So, but yes, the summer tour, sadly, is a maybe next year scenario for me. Look, I'm going to the Bernabeu in a few weeks' time. That, for me, I'd rather do that. I'd rather do that than the tour. So there you go. Betty says, rather go for Sesko or Gyökeres. We can easily sign either and still get a winger, Lookman or Nico Williams. Amberley says, I think it's more about playing time with Heaven. He wasn't really getting much of a sniff here. Ontong Soup says, Cheeto doubled his wages. United fans think it's because it's United. I know United fans think it's because it's United. Trust me, if Arsenal offered the same amount of money that Man United were able to offer, I am so certain he would have stayed. Aaron says, got to stop revealing too much because a lot try to stop great signage of good players, but the speculation is the same way of doing hacking, Tom. Lols. Arsenal hate is real. I mean, at the end of the day, the whole world of kind of transfer journalism in that sense is there's so much noise. There's so much that's not true that happens. It kind of, in a way, blankets the whole truth element of the transfer. So there never really has to be too much worry about revealing plans of a club or talks with a club, because there's so much noise that it doesn't really matter these days. Ray Beam says, hi Tom, are you not concerned that we have to replace so many key players in one window, expecting at least 5 or 8 incoming, especially, I mean, if you're expecting 8 players to go in, tell me the last time Liverpool or Man City signed 8 players. It's not going to happen. You are going to have to do some work internally. Obviously, that's happened in some ways this season with Lewis Skelly and Waneri. And next season, I think we might see Max Dowman get potentially some opportunities too. So that will be another internal solution. Ultimately, we can't do 8 signings. It's just not realistic. 5, I'm expecting. I think I'm looking at saying 5 has got to be. Surely 5 is an expectation of a minimum number of deals, number of players to come into the team. But 8 is just not realistic. I mean, I could be proven wrong, but when you're already talking about spending 100 million on Isak, which I don't think will happen, but when you're already talking about that, it's a tough one. Van Duty says, rather than pre-recorded shows while you're on holiday, have you thought about guest presenters? I am the biggest control freak that I don't know whether or not I could do that. Not that I don't trust people, but I have done stuff in the past where I have kind of given a chunk of responsibility to a third party with the channel, and it's just not gone well. Like, you remember that we used to have some like YouTube shorts on the channel before? Like, that was the only time I gave kind of like any responsibility to somebody else to do something with the channel, and it backfired. Like, not even worth going into. Just I wasn't very happy with some of the work that was sent my way, for reasons that just it wouldn't have even been appropriate to post on YouTube, type of thing. So I'm very much a control freak when it comes to this. So I get the idea, and it's not like I don't know some amazing people that I'm sure would do brilliantly, but I almost think it would be good to just take a break, just have nothing for a week and a bit. If anything big drops, of course, I'll take my laptop so I can do something on that. But I almost feel like, I don't need to. So I think sometimes a break is good, and then we can come back and fully refreshed and push through into next season. Matt G says, Tom, can you see any youth players other than Max Dowman to push through into the first team? Honestly, I'm struggling at the moment. Like, I thought maybe we might see someone like Andre Harriman and Noose, for instance, as a forward option when we had this situation with Nathan Butler and not really getting any minutes. Could we see a Tommy Setford break into the goalkeeping setup? Could Josh Nichols break into the side? I don't know. There's always been quite a lot of opportunities given to players like Jimmy Gower, for instance. Again, I don't know if he's going to be of the level to break through. In terms of forward players, Ismail Kabi has been on the bench quite a lot, but again, hasn't been playing. He's kind of just, with respect, kind of making up the numbers there. There's another young forward called Louis Zasevich John, who's also quite an exciting young player, but again, I don't know if they're going to be able to break through. So let's see what happens. Let's go to Andy. Says, Tom, it will be 3 signings max. Start scaling down expectations. Season ticket renewal is underway. Andy, our resident pessimist in the chat box. Tipsy says, Arsenal's 18 to 23 cohort is not exactly impressive right now. The 14 to 16 age level is where a lot of talent is at the moment. So we're maybe a few years off. Soup says, it's like when you learn to drive. You can no longer be comfortable when other people drive for you. Yeah, it is one of those, isn't it? It's a good example of that. I mean, for the record, I don't think I've ever got into a car that I've not been. I haven't felt safe in, but yeah, I know where you're coming from. It's a good analogy. Joe says it's going to get probably harder to break into this team now as our standards have gone up so much. Absolutely. PGU says, Tom, would you rather Arsenal win the league but Spurs win the Champions League, or none of them win it? Oh, I'd rather Arsenal win the league. My love for Arsenal will always outweigh my hatred of Spurs. I can't ever understand that. I know I've watched a few videos of like this question being asked to Tottenham fans, and the overriding answer usually is, I'd rather Arsenal not win, because that's a Spurs mentality, to look at another club as a bigger priority than your own. If you genuinely couldn't stomach Tottenham winning the Champions League over Arsenal winning the league, it's because your hatred for another club eclipses your love for your own. Could never be me. Could not ever do that. I couldn't give a monkey's what they do. I really don't care. If we're winning the title, whatever. We're the best team in the league, whatever. We move. It would have been an anomaly anyway for them. But thankfully, we'll never have to worry about that. Oliver says it's difficult finding good help and you have to control your business. Yeah, this is my livelihood, at the end of the day. If you're giving your livelihood to someone to take over, it's a big thing. It's a lot of trust to have. So, yeah, I'd much rather just take a break and give you a break of this ugly mug for a week or so. I think that's important. Joe says Spurs would rather they got relegated to League Two than Arsenal win the league. Absolutely. Ray says Spurs throwing that game against City last season and their fans celebrating must be the most Spursy thing. Yeah, exactly that. That is 100% the perfect example of why Spurs will always be inferior to Arsenal. Always, forever, in all time. Those moments where they celebrated losing a game to stop Arsenal in the league, that right there is exactly like your best player, and I am certain about this, misses on purpose against City. It's a chance that Son puts away any other day of the week, and doesn't in this case. So it is what it is. Asada says, on the topic of Spurs, where do you think they would or be now if they didn't sack Pochettino? I don't know. Maybe, probably better off, wouldn't they? Probably would have been better off than they are now. Would they have won a trophy? Probably not. It's Spurs. I almost don't even see it as them sacking Poch. I see it more as Poch escaping to go and win trophies with PSG. I think he did a decent job with Chelsea in his first season. I don't think he deserved to get sacked. I don't think Enzo Maresca's done particularly better than him. I don't think Maresca's a particularly better coach than Mauricio Pochettino. I mean, this season they might get into Champions League football, but they're building on what they obviously did last season. They also might not get Champions League football. They're still teams like Brighton and Villa and Bournemouth and Newcastle and City that are all chasing them. Fulham in that equation you can argue as well, but it's quite a big gap to them. But yeah, there's teams in these equations that are still chasing that, and I think there's a lot of football still to be played. Anyway, that's going to bring us to the end of today's show. Thank you so much, as always, for tuning in. Really appreciate your time. If you could drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you're new around here with those notifications turned on, so you never miss a show. That would be incredibly appreciated. I'll be back with you tomorrow morning, bright and early, 9 a.m. What am I talking about? Well, I mean, if you're in Europe, for some of you, 9 a.m. Elsewhere, of course, and here, 8 a.m. UK time. Thank you so much, as always, for tuning in. Stay safe, stay well, stay happy and respectful. And as always, up the Arsenal.